Hello there, dear loving souls. You're very welcome to this office and to this channel where we talk about universal laws and how we can all practice more love on a daily basis. Now, the subject matter of today's video series is all about yawning. I know, you might feel like it's going to be a very boring topic, but I don't think it will be. There were a few reasons why I decided to talk about it today, and I will delve into those just in a short while. But as always, part one will be us talking about the facts and the universal laws of the subject matter. Part two will be all about the application of those universal laws, and part three will be all about getting some messages from the spirit world, our ancestors, our guardian angels, any other spirits that are present during today's video, and in order to give us some more insight into the subject. And today we're going to be talking about yawning. So grab a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or water or any beverage that you enjoy and sit back and relax and let's chat about yawning. So as always, part one, why did I want to talk about it? Well, there were a couple of signs that were just kind of being highlighted to me over the last week and a bit, I would say, and it was all about yawning. Something about it that I just paid a little bit more attention to. It just kind of caught my eye, and I know that when something catches my eye or something I'm just focusing on a little bit more, then it's effectively a synchronicity in my life, and that means that there's something about it. Now, honestly, just a couple of hours ago, I went for a walk, and I had two people on my journey literally look at me and start yawning at me. And funny enough, I had earpods, in my ears listening to music, and literally as I'm watching this person walk towards me yawning, one of the lyrics was something about yawning, and I was like, okay, I get the message. I have to talk about this. And first I thought, well, is there really much to talk about yawning? And I then thought a bit more about it, and I realized, well, actually I do have a slightly different, I guess, thoughts or meaning behind what yawning is, and perhaps this video series might actually inspire some of you to think differently about yawning, or perhaps even share your thoughts and comments and some of the observations that you have made in your life when it comes to literally yawning. And if so, if you've got some fantastic interpretations of what it might mean, please comment down below in the under the description box, because I think it would be helpful for us to actually kick off a bit of a discussion as to what could yawning actually be all about. Now, and not just about, and what I mean by that is not just about, the typical societal interpretation that if you yawn, you must be tired. I mean, that we kind of all know that one, but I think there's a little bit more to it, hence the video series. So if we jump into some universal laws in connection with the topic of yawning, the first one that I want to talk about is actually our physical body, right? So when we incarnate onto planet Earth, we effectively get to choose some of the prerequisites that come with the physical body that we get to experience our lifetime in. And I do strongly believe that every single element of our body is by design. There's a good reason for every single organ, every single function, every single way we are actually made. And so that by natural implication means that by design, yawning is a feature that is quite important. And yes, as I mentioned, in society we all think, right, it's a symbol or sign of like you being tired or sleeping. But then in my life, I have noticed that I've been yawning at times when I'm not sleepy at all. And there were times when I sit in like community functions or workshops or presentations and whatnot, and I would see people yawn, and it's like middle of the day, and I'm sure they're not tired. But more importantly, I noticed that I would yawn, and I'm definitely not tired or sleeping. So that got me, that kind of observations, observations throughout my life, even as a kid, I started thinking more about, why do we yawn? Surely it's not only something to do with you being sleepy. And the other point is, I've definitely when I started thinking more and observing more as to the times or the circumstances I was in when I yawned, I realized it would be when I was in like a church or a temple, when I was in a state of prayer, when I would do, like readings or doing some study in terms of the using tarot cards and whatnot, so really connecting with my spiritual self or my soul, my spirit, my intuitive side of me. I would yawn, and I actually recall saying this to one person that just before I started their reading, I said, hey, like, please don't be offended in case you see me yawn. I'm not bored and I'm certainly not tired. It's just, in fact, it's a confirmation that the information that's flowing is actually like from the universe. It's good information. Like, I'm aligned with the spiritual connection right now. I am connected, and as a result of that, I'm yawning. So that got me thinking really, and jumping perhaps into the second universal law that, as always, the heart in my world is the bridge between our physical body and our spiritual body. There's the hardware and the software part of it. So it's all about the second universal law is just a reminder that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, and that within our physical body there is a spirit, hardware, software, if you want to think about it that way. And I think there's this really good alignment about once I started observing that I would yawn, and like when I'm praying, and as an example, there has to be something to do with my spirit or my soul. There has to be some connection as to why I'm yawning and what I'm doing, what I'm thinking about, what kind of state I'm in. And if we go into perhaps the third universal law that I wanted to talk about here today, and that it keeps kind of flashing in my mind, quite frankly, and the word communication keeps just flashing in my head. Excuse me. And there's, there we go, see, like, I'm trying, maybe that's a little sign, the fact that I, like, coughing a little bit, it's, I think it's like an interesting sign from the universe to say, yep, it's something to do with your throat, with your voice, with your speaking, with your communication, right? And specifically that we are all, because we're all spiritual beings, and we are all effectively energy if you're watching this channel, and we're all one web of connections, even though sometimes physically we can't see it in this particular school of earth, having all the limitations and restrictions that we have on us by design when we're in a human body. I think it's our way of communicating on a spiritual level. So a yawn, excuse me, would feel like a release of energy, or like a release of something coming from out of you, perhaps from your heart sort of zone or your chest, and it comes out through your mouth. And let's recall, like, our mouth is actually quite a significant, organ or area of our body as well. We eat, so we consume food, which is obviously there to keep us alive, so important function. Likewise, we use our vocal cords and our throat, and for the sound to come through our mouth, right? So, and obviously voice and speaking is a big element of how we interact with one another, how we communicate with one another when we're on planet Earth. So the fact that we yawn is such a physical sign and representation that somebody else can see as well, makes me think that there's significance that should be attributed to yawning. And have you noticed how sometimes yawning is quite catchy? You yawn yourself and then you see somebody else yawn, or you yawn somebody, you look at them and then you yawn yourself. Something that's certainly not something to do with tiredness or sleepiness, right? If it happens during the day. I mean, next time you might want to observe that little phenomenon. I've certainly seen it in my life. And so I think going back to that concept of one web of connections, I actually think that there is, on a spiritual level, that there's some kind of message or some sort of sign or communication that occurs when we yawn, and individually and as a group, as a collective. So I'm going to wrap up part one to give you a flavour of what we're going to be talking about today. Let's just jump into part two, the application of these universal laws. Click on the link down below for part two, and I will see you shortly to talk more about yawning.